Welcome to Chicago Counterpoint Television, brought to you by CAN TV and the Fatherhood Educational Institute. It's great being here another Thursday evening, and we really appreciate you welcoming us into your homes, because this is a very special program, a very special show, and it's really important to seek social justice, legal reform, and make this world a better place. And that's what we're trying to do here. And if anybody wants any information on the Fatherhood Educational Institute, you could always contact the Fatherhood Educational Institute at 312-795-9060, and that's 312-795-9060. There's a great website. Here's a snapshot of the website, fatherhood-edu.org. And for our show today, we're very fortunate to have attorney Kevin O'Connor here, and he does great work representing victims of civil rights violations, medical negligence, horrific accidents, and he has obtained several million and multi-million-dollar settlements and verdicts on behalf of Chicagoland victims who didn't even have any money and couldn't even afford to hire a lawyer. So it's great to have you on the show, Kevin.
Thank you for having me, Jeff.
And it looks like we're already getting callers. First caller, you're on the air, Chicago Counterpoint TV. I'm attorney Jeffrey Leving, the legal commentator, host tonight. Kevin O'Connor, who used to be a legal correspondent for ABC 7 News. Very interesting. He's also the president of the Gaelic Lawyers. So what can he do for you this evening?
Well, I have a question about your show. I've been watching it for weeks, and my brother went through a situation where he was taken to the ringer, was very biased. And I'm wondering, fathers like you, to help fathers in need, is there a way we can get involved to get the word out?
Well, I hope there's nothing wrong with the audio. The audio in the studio sounds a bit distorted, but I hope the viewing audience, they're getting good audio. But from what I heard, there are ways to get involved, helping other people, helping fathers, and getting involved in the fatherhood movement. And if you want to get involved with the Fatherhood Educational Institute, great charity, 501c3, Illinois not-for-profit, you could always call 312-795-9060 and take a look at its website, fatherhood-edu.org. Very good organization. And also, it has a great Twitter at Fatherhood EDU, and you can see it on your TV screen, and also a great Facebook, Fatherhood Educational Institute. So take a look at that too. But the Fatherhood Educational Institute is always looking for volunteers, and it's a good way to make a change and make this world a better place. I would like to talk to Kevin O'Connor, but keep in mind, before we talk, you could always call in, because this is an interactive TV show, and callers are very welcome. Now, Kevin, what are your thoughts on the recent incidents of police in our country? Certain things are somewhat concerning to me.
There's been a lot in the media here. I've handled a number of cases in Chicago, North Chicago, Waukegan, where we have police acting excessively or beyond what they should do. And we saw a recent incident here where it's been highlighted with this nurse going on in the country, where she was manhandled by this police officer because she was basically following the law. She said, look, I have a patient who's unconscious, he can't consent, and you're looking to take his blood related to an auto accident. And the really sad part about that is the U.S. Supreme Court had already ruled on that issue the year earlier. I mean, it was a case, I think it was Birchfield versus North Dakota, that had happened the year earlier. The United States Supreme Court said you can't take somebody's blood without their consent, and you must get a warrant. And this lady called her supervisor, said, look, what am I supposed to do? And they said, well, at that point, you can't do it. He's unconscious. And the police officer, not knowing the law, did this. Why does this happen is really the question, and why is our society having this happen? Unfortunately, the first thing that a municipality does, and I've seen this happen in numerous places, is they cut the funding to train police officers. How did the nurse know the law better than the police officer? I've actually had certain communities in our northern suburbs where I've volunteered to come in and speak to their police officers, give them an update to prevent them from doing things like that, and they haven't even accepted the volunteer actions that I would give them to do it, and yet they're continuing to violate the law, and they're going to end up paying a lot of money for the false arrest that she was subject to.
That is terrible. We do have a caller, and we should get the caller on the air. Caller, you're on the air now, Chicago Counterpoint Television. I'm the host, Attorney Jeffrey Leving, and we have Kevin O'Connor here, an attorney, a legal commentator. He used to be a legal correspondent for ABC 7 News, great trial lawyer. What can he do for you tonight?
Well, I'm kind of wondering, I've been in an accident, and I'm going to be getting a very big settlement, but I'm also getting a divorce, and I'm wondering if my wife can get any part of that settlement.
Well, unfortunately, there's a good chance it could be considered marital property. So I don't know if you want to hear the rest of that answer on this TV show where there's over 1 million households this show is airing in, because it's a very, very, very sensitive question. But the answer is it could be marital property. This is something that you're better off discussing privately with your lawyer. And be careful, though, that over 1 million households have this show tuned into their homes. So we don't have confidentiality on this TV show, but I do appreciate you calling in. It's a great question, and the laws have changed this year. But unfortunately, that could be considered marital property. Now, the laws do vary depending on the state you're in. Illinois and Indiana, for instance, are both equitable division of property states, but the laws can be very different, very, very different. So it also depends on the state you're in. But thank you for calling, a very interesting call, and if you need any information about charitable work, the Fatherhood Educational Institute is a great charity. They do a lot of good work. 312-795-9060, 312-795-9060, and check out their Twitter at Fatherhood EDU. Their Twitter is at Fatherhood EDU. Great Twitter. Next caller, you're on the air. Attorney Jeffrey Leving, and we have Kevin O'Connor here tonight. What can he do for you?
Yes, hi. I had LASIK surgery 3 weeks ago, and my eyes are very, very dry. The doctor gave me some eye drops, but they're not getting any better. What should I do?
That's a pretty simple question that doesn't take a lawyer. The first thing you should do is obviously, one, you should be in contact with your doctor, but two, probably more importantly, normally after that type of procedure, I believe it's within only a couple days that the normal consequences, you should have some dryness in your eye, but that should resolve. You probably need to consult with another doctor to get a second opinion. That shouldn't offend your original doctor because you're simply getting another opinion, because if he did nothing wrong, you'd get the right answer, right? But oftentimes what people fail to do is to get help immediately, and then there's long-term consequences to the type of procedure you had that they can't reverse anymore. So I would get help immediately. Then you have to see what the long-term consequences are, and if there is long-term consequences or the doctor reached the standard of care, which is our standard here in Illinois, then you may need to seek legal help to have somebody take a look at that.
Thank you for calling. Very important call. And it's very unfortunate that there are doctors that do commit malpractice, and when they don't get sued, it doesn't help with accountability in that profession. Accountability saves future lives. Thank you for calling. Our next caller, you're on the air. I'm Attorney Jeffrey Leving, the host of Chicago Counterpoint TV. Very fortunate to have Attorney Kevin O'Connor here as our guest this evening. What can he do and we do for you this evening?
Yeah, hi. I appreciate you taking my call. I had a question about if somebody's injured on like a sidewalk or something like that, and you really don't know who maintains it, how would you go about even suing somebody or filing a suit to determine who might be liable for that? Or could you?
That's a very good question, and that's why you would technically need some legal help, right? Lawyers have resources available to them. Oftentimes we know who owns a particular sidewalk, but we can do certain information or requests to determine it. I want to tell you a little bit about that case. They're very difficult cases. Why? Because we have millions of miles of sidewalk, and the laws have been developed in Illinois that have set certain guidelines or parameters. If you're in a residential street, it has to be more than de minimis, which the courts have held. If it's less than 2 inches, it's de minimis on a residential street. If you're in a commercial area, there's exceptions to that to where it can be less than that. But if it's a major defect and it's something that the city had notice of and they failed to remedy it, they're liable just like any other corporation or individual for their negligence in failing to maintain their property in a reasonably safe manner for everybody else. Of course, you've got the issues of your own negligence that may factor into that, and if you're more than 50% responsible for not discovering the defect, unfortunately, under Illinois law, you don't recover. But it's a good question. That's why lawyers have those resources. We have the ability to determine that. We do it through plats of survey, through other things, to determine who is the owner of a particular property.
Thank you, caller. That was a great question, and I have a whole bunch of questions I want to ask Kevin O'Connor, but apparently the phones are ringing off the hooks, so I may have to ask him a whole bunch of questions on the next show if I can get him to appear again. Caller, you're on the air. Attorney Jeffrey Leving, Chicago Counterpoint TV, and our guest tonight is Attorney Kevin O'Connor.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I have a cousin who has been sick for a while and had gone to the doctor, and the doctor said it was nothing to worry about, and now finally he got a second opinion, and it turns out that he's got stage 3 colon cancer. Is there anything that he can do about that?
That's a horrible, horrific story to hear, and unfortunately we hear it too often. Doctors are often quick to say, you know what, you're fine, take an aspirin, go home, and not many doctors do that, but there are a few that do that. And when they do that and they fail to investigate or do the appropriate thing, there is a likelihood that there may be a medical negligence case under Illinois law. People think it's easy to file a case against a doctor in Illinois. It is very difficult. They are a very difficult standard to prove. Virtually, I haven't heard of virtually anybody who's handled that pro se or on their own without a lawyer who's been successful. There may be somebody out there, but out of all of the hundreds of thousands of cases that are filed a year, I haven't heard of any. The standard is so difficult because you have to have a doctor in the same or similar specialty read all of the records and determine that doctor breached the minimum standard of care by failing to do what they're supposed to do under their rules. Why a lot of people, I have medical people in my family, they're very critical, unfortunately, of those kind of cases. Other people are. I don't like to see those kind of cases. All of us hope that our doctors do a wonderful job, and most of them do. But if we don't pursue those cases against the doctors that are providing substandard work, what's going to end up happening is the next person down the road, 2, 3, 4 are going to suffer the same fate and may die because you decided not to take action or you thought perhaps it wouldn't be help or do something. Once these doctors have multiple claims against them, it does affect their ability to get privileges at a hospital, and it does get reported to the state on a national or on a local or state level of the claims and the settlements that they put out. So it does have an impact on future people getting their care.
Yeah, thank you for calling, and Kevin's answer was right on point. This is really, really important. Next caller, you're on the air, Chicago Counterpoint with Jeffrey Loving. What can Attorney Kevin O'Connor do for you this evening?
Yes, hi. I was in an accident almost a year ago, and I went through all the hoops that the insurance company asked me. I didn't get an attorney, and now I'm getting the runaround from them for a Solomon claim. Is it too late for me to start looking for an attorney?
Well, I'll let Kevin O'Connor answer that, but in my opinion, it's never too late to protect your legal rights. But Kevin, please help this gentleman.
Every claim has what's called a statute of limitations. That statute of limitations varies depending on the entity that's involved. If you were hit by somebody that was driving for a governmental agency, that statute of limitations can be as low as 1 year, whereas the general injury statute is 2 years, but can be extended for extenuating circumstances and if you're a minor or if you're under a legal disability. But there's other exceptions. That's why you need to seek legal advice right away. People think, you know what, I'm going to try and settle this case on my own. There are so many lawyers in this state and every state because insurance companies are in the business of doing one thing. They are a corporation that are designed to make money. And their idea is to bring in as much money as they can and pay out as little as possible. And if they treated people fairly, you wouldn't need lawyers to resolve their case. You wouldn't have the number of lawsuits that you have because people can't get the justice that they deserve. Insurance companies in recent trend have not even been offering people their medical bills, saying, you know what, the doctor will take less money, don't worry about it, and they end up trying to give the people less than even the actual out-of-pocket expenses that they've had, although they'll string them along hoping that they'll blow that statute of limitations you're talking about. It's never too late to ask. Hopefully you're not too late and you're not dealing with a municipal person, but oftentimes when someone hits you, you may not know that they were driving for their work or driving for, and they worked for a municipality or a government agency, and if you didn't know that, you could lose your rights, which would be a terrible thing.
Yeah, Kevin is more than correct. This is really, really important because if you're not a lawyer and you're negotiating with a representative from an insurance company or a lawyer, they can play you and pretend to be interested in settling fairly and drag things out to the point where you miss the statute of limitations and can't file timely, and then they say bye-bye and they don't have to give you a penny, and you're not entitled to a penny. So be careful. Get a lawyer, and it shouldn't be a big problem because in these types of cases, many lawyers that are highly skilled will work on a contingency fee with no money at all. It's a straight contingency fee. So you don't want to get in a situation where you get manipulated and settlement negotiations drag on past the point where the statute of limitations is blown and you filed nothing and then you've lost your legal rights. Be real careful. Don't end up a target looking for an arrow. It's a very important question, and Kevin's answer was 100% on the spot. He hit the bullseye.
You brought up a really good point because people are afraid to call lawyers because they say, you know what, I can't afford to call a lawyer. I can't deal with a lawyer. What am I supposed to do? I can barely make my bills. I'm not working from an accident. Injury-related lawyers are people that are doing this type of work, that know what they're doing, operate on a contingency fee. That means we get a percentage of whatever you recover, and if there's no recovery, you pay no attorney's fees. So when you call to consult on a case, if we answer the phone and say, you know what, I can't help you, you're past the statute of limitations, we're not sending you a bill. We're consulting for free with you on your case to determine if you have a case, and if we accept your case, we're going to get paid out of the recovery you make. So there's no reason not to call.
So I think the message here is if you're in an accident and it's a contingency fee case and you can hire the best lawyer in the city of Chicago, why not do that if it's a contingency fee and you're not paying any upfront cash? You might as well get the best lawyer there is. And that's critical, really, really critical. Next caller, you're on Chicago Counterpoint Television. I'm your host, Jeffrey Loving, and it's a pleasure to have attorney Kevin O'Connor here as as my guest and legal correspondent for this evening.
Hi, my brother was in a car accident and won't be able to work for a while as he has a kind of a serious head injury. He has 5 kids and he doesn't know what to do about paying child support since he's not working.
Well,
You've bridged both our gaps here.
yeah, so who answers? Well, first of all, if there's a child support order, he better get into court and abate it, at least temporarily end it. If not, the support continues to build up, and it's a judgment collecting 9% statutory interest, and he can end up being prosecuted by the state's attorney's office for non-payment of support, facing possible jail time. So plan for the future. He needs to get into court with a petition to abate support. Otherwise, the support exists. Now, the accident, the other end of the question, I'll let Kevin O'Connor answer.
You're so right. I have a client that actually never told us or even advised us that he had a child out of wedlock and had a child support payment in another state. And he ended up with that exact same thing you're talking about, that he ended up getting prosecuted. And he told us a little too little, a little too late, and then we get people involved like you that come in and try and save the day for him. But you know what? It's a lot harder to save the day after the fact than going in early and trying to get that fixed. When it comes to an injury, it's so important to get help right away. When you're in an accident like that, there's things that should be paid out right away without even a fight, such as medical payments coverage that you have under your own policy that should come to pay some of your out-of-pocket medical expenses. A person with a head injury like that should be filing for disability, Social Security disability, to get help from the government because they clearly can't have the capability of earning anything on their own. And also you need to get representation soon because the sooner you file your case, the sooner you get in line behind everybody else to get your case heard in court. And we do have methods if you're over the age of 70, there's a special provision in Illinois, or you have severe financial hardship, your case can get pushed ahead of everybody else's case in the court system to be heard first. And that's an important provision a lot of lawyers don't know about that really help you get your case soon so that you don't go into the poorhouse and into bankruptcy before your case is over.
Next caller. We have a lot of callers tonight. Next
Hello.
caller, you're on the air.
Hi, I actually have a question for Mr. Loving. My friend just found out that her ex-daughter-in-law and grandchildren are living in an apartment building where there's a sex offender. And she's wondering whether her son, the dad, can do anything about that.
Absolutely. I had a case very similar to this in Lake County, terrible case, and I had to try the case, and I won. This is really, really important here. We are coming close to the end of the show, but you can call the Fatherhood Educational Institute. I'll be glad to advise you through the institute, and I will not. There's no fee involved because there's not enough time really to finish up now, unless we could extend the show. I don't know how much more time they'll give us, but this is really, really important. You're talking about a sex offender. I need a lot more information. You could always call the Fatherhood Educational Institute, 312-795-9060. Very, very important. And also, it's very confidential, and I don't know how much of this we want to discuss on the air with an issue of a sex offender, because the show reaches over 1 million households. So this is something very private you want to talk about, and it should be discussed very privately. But I will help. I will help. Next caller, you're on the air, Chicago Counterpoint TV. Your host, Attorney Jeffrey Loving. Very fortunate to have Kevin O'Connor here. He's I think I said he was the president of the Gaelic Lawyers. Actually, he's the president of the Gaelic Lawyers and Judges Society. So I want to make that real clear. Very important organization, very important. And I actually used to have a Celtic coin collection, but most of it's gone because the doors weren't locked to my office one evening. So most of it's gone, but I do have a few left.
You still got it in spirit.
Right. And I'll never find out where they are. That's what happens when you don't lock the doors. All right, I'm sorry, I can't take any more calls. Apparently, it looks like I have to wrap up the show. I see a big 5, but I don't know if that means 5 minutes or I can't
It
read.
does.
5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't read the sign too well. So with 5 minutes, we do have a little more time than I thought. But
Here's something that I think that the people need to really know, and it's a common sense approach, but it makes a lot of sense that people forget about. When I'm looking for a doctor, I go to a doctor and ask, who would you hire if you had that problem? Because I want to get the best of the best. If I'm looking for a lawyer, I would ask somebody to say, who would you go to if you had a fatherhood issue and you had to look for your father's rights to be protected? Likewise, people should be asking questions of their doctors, questions of their lawyers. How many times have you handled this case? How many of a similar case have you handled? Is this the only thing you do, or do you on the weekends do real estate and do something else? Or have you focused or concentrated your practice in one area? Like you've done for father's rights, I know that you're not going to go trying to close on a house or write a will, because that's not what you focus on. There are other lawyers that do that. And so you want the lawyers that other lawyers would hire if they had an issue, which I know you've done, and I've seen it in the past. So without breaching any confidentiality for people. But that's an important thing people should know and should really focus on.
when it comes to your legal rights, to protecting your children, to the safety and welfare of your family, when it comes to your health, your eyes, your medical issues, you want the best you can get. And do your research. Do your research. If you're going to contact a surgeon, talk to your internist and ask your internist, who would you hire if this was your wife or your father? All right? Do not play games with your health or with your legal rights. It's really, really important. And I know we're wrapping up the show right now, but I still see that the phones are ringing. But Jennifer, can we take another call, or is there enough time for one more call? All right, there's enough time for one more call, but it has to be really short because we're going to have to wrap up the show. Caller, you're on the air. What can we do for you?
Yeah, this is Carson. Am I on?
You're on the air, Carson.
Okay, I had a question for the attorney that's involved in the personal injury. I heard there was a change in the law with regard to 6 versus 12-man juries. For a while, they were invalidating some. Can you tell me about that? I'm really curious about that.
Sure. What happened is there was a change in the legislature in Illinois. This is Illinois. Every state's different. To where they were trying to move from a 12-person jury to a 6-person jury. That was challenged in the court, and based on the Illinois state constitution, that was found to be unconstitutional. So there is a 12-person jury that has to be unanimous in Illinois, and that's based on the Illinois Constitution. Every state's a little different. In federal court in Illinois, you only are allowed a 6-person civil jury, but you are allowed 12 in the state courts.
Thank
So
you.
the cases that were ruled on with the 6-man, are they still valid judgments then, or?
They are still valid unless your attorney in that case appealed the 6-person verdict or challenged it, and if they did not, then you're stuck with whatever that ruling is.
I'm sorry, I have to wrap up the show because we have to go off the air. But thank you for calling, caller. Appreciate the call. Kevin, thank you.
No, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to come on your show.
And it was a great show, and I look forward to seeing everybody same time, same place next week. God bless.